5 weeks on for the Australian Grand Prix for the World Superbikes, we move over to Portimao, the Algarve International Circuit, and it's time for the third practice session. 20 more minutes ahead of us before we head in to Superpole to set the grid. Welcome to Saturday here at the Algarve. Green light is on, the session is underway. We're having a bit of issues with Discovery Plus, so we are heading over to the world feed for this session.
Very calm, very relaxed, and big smiles as well, as he does here in the commentary box. And quite interesting, yesterday after FP2, the team did perform a tyre stop yesterday, so it was quite interesting to see that in the pit lane. But Michael van der Mark went 0.8 of a second faster on a new tyre compared to the long runs he was showing during FP2 yesterday.
Yeah, for Van der Mark, it looks like they're going to be thereabouts this weekend. It's a track that suits his style. It's a track that obviously suits the BMW Top Rack fast in FP2 and Van der Mark right up there. The Superpole session is what it all comes down to. We'll see that they'll work together, and that'll mean that Van der Mark should be pulled up an extra row in the grid compared to where maybe that pace is if you're out there on your own. And the same is the case for Top Rack as well. He gets the benefit of being able to tow behind Van der Mark for a lap as well. So they'll work together in the Superpole session later on this morning. This 20-minute session is your opportunity just to see if the changes you've made overnight have helped improve the package.
Another team that we saw working together yesterday in FP1 was the Aruba Racing Ducatis of Alvaro Bautista and Nicolo Buliga. They were running around together for most of the session yesterday, and it was quite interesting. On Bautista's pit board, he was given the target lap time of Nicolo Buliga throughout the session. So yeah, it was a bit of gamesmanship going on from Ducati there, but we might see them working together in Superpole later on as well.
I think that it's one of those situations where with all the Ducati riders, you're trying to find that right person where you're able to partner up with. Bautista and Buliga are in direct competition with one another, and it's interesting to see the dynamics within the team this year compared to last year, because if you think back to last year, Buliga's a rookie, no real expectations on him. Bautista's a double world champion, all the expectations on him, and now it's really been flipped because Buliga's the championship threat for Ducati. Bautista's the guy trying to come back in and prove that he's still able to get the job done for them.
Yeah, Nicolo Buliga really did come in last year and sort of wrestle control of the Ducati team from Alvaro Bautista. Now we're watching Alex Lowe's on screen at the beginning of this FP3 session, and he was showing some good consistent pace yesterday. Looks like it could be top 5 or top 6 pace when we're comparing it to the rest of the riders. Had 3 laps in 140s, and 2 of them came towards the end of the session, so they made a change on the bike and of course change of tyre, and it looked like it really did suit Alex Lowe. And we spoke to Game Roda yesterday, and he seemed quite confident of a better weekend this weekend compared to Phillip Island. There's Iker Lecuona back on track this weekend after missing Phillip Island due to an injury, and for the game plan for Iker yesterday was just short laps, short run pace, and no big long run pace this weekend so far, but we might see him on a continuous run in FP3. Now, Andrea Locatelli, not the sole rider, he's following his replacement teammate just ahead of him, replacing Jonathan Ray. If you're just joining us for the first time this weekend, Jonathan Ray is still out of action, but Jason O'Halloran, multiple British Superbike race winner and of course Endurance World Championship Yamaha rider, and of course Yamaha test rider, he's on the bike this weekend. And Paul Denning said to us yesterday, if Jonathan isn't back for Assen, which seems like a tall order, then we could see Jason O'Halloran back as he just gets a move done on him in towards turn number 5 from his teammate Andrea Locatelli. Watching Axel Bassani on screen now, the other Bimota rider. He struggled in testing here a couple of weeks ago, didn't he, Steve? But it seemed yesterday that Bimota were quietly confident of improvement this weekend, especially yesterday in FP2, because he was out on a used tyre for most of the session.
Yeah, I think for Bimota it's one of those situations where they just need to do everything they can with their package, their bike, and make progress with it. But we saw yesterday, down a little bit on top speed. That has a big impact around here, because for any rider, you don't want to give up 5 or 6 kilometers an hour. You definitely don't want to be giving up 8, 9, 10 kilometers an hour. And it means that everyone's a little bit vulnerable on that bike being overtaken in the race, and then you have to find a way to still be in front at the end of the lap. And that means that you're having to put more and more pressure on yourself in the braking zones. You're having to ride the corners harder. You're having to attack in areas to try and give yourself the chance to either open a gap or come back at someone. And for the Bimotas, at this stage of the project, that's one of the big challenges that they have. But they are making progress with the bike. We've seen that, particularly Lowe's is a good example of it, because we saw over the last few years a good of a job he could do with the Kawasaki, particularly last season. And then this year, changing over to the Bimota, it seems almost every time he gets on the bike, he feels more comfortable on it. So we're starting to see him make more and more progress with the package.
Seems to be that the practice sessions have turned into testing sessions, because the off-season was squandered a little bit due to a lot of wet weather, and then they went to Phillip Island, which is usually a very different track compared to the rest of the calendar. So yeah, the FP sessions are a testing bed for Bimota with that new project at the moment. Remy Gardner on your screen now, the number 87, been a little bit... We haven't seen too much of him so far this weekend, Remy Gardner, as he goes to second in this session with 15 minutes remaining. Alex Lowe's currently tops the session ahead of Gardner. Bautista just running in front of him as they go in towards turn number 3. Andrea Locatelli and Scott Redding running at your top 5 in the opening few minutes of this session. We're watching top rack Raz Gadlioglu now. The rider with the target on his back so far this weekend in terms of the championship is Nicolo Biliga, but in terms of pace and speed this weekend, it is the BMW rider.
Yeah, and certainly Top Rack is, after the test, very confident in the package around here, but you can see that he's still pushing hard. We saw in yesterday's session, loses FP1. You don't want to give up 20 laps to your rivals. Top Rack had to do that yesterday, but he'll still feel very comfortable on the bike going into the Super Pole session, that he can make that difference. He can be the guy to beat this weekend. It looks like he's got a couple of tenths of a second in hand over everyone right now, but that changes as the weekend progresses.
Yeah, well, indeed, we just saw Top Rack running off circuit there, following one of the Barney Ducatis into the runoff area at turn number 1. Andrea Iannone and Andrea Locatelli, it's the race of the Andreas in towards turn number 1 for the time being. I think Andrea Iannone's just run off track there.
Just to look at the times as well, Alex Lowe's and Remy Gardner improving their times from yesterday, and we've got Locatelli improving, Iker Lecuona as well, and everyone else just kind of matching their pace from yesterday at this stage. We'll wait and see what Top Rack's able to do whenever he puts in a representative lap time in the next couple of laps, but everyone else just trying to basically keep pace of what they were doing, and we'll see what the likes of Alvaro Bautista is able to do. He's up there third fastest, you can see on the timing tower on the left hand side of the screen. Hasn't made an improvement from yesterday, and we know that he used those 2 tyres yesterday. So what's Bautista's program in this session? Is he out there to do a 10 or 11 lap run and he's trying to use that new tyre to understand it, or is he going to do a time attack during this session?
Yeah, 140.7 so far from Bautista in this session. He's a couple of hundredths slower than what he did yesterday. He done a 147.706 yesterday, so he's well and truly on the pace of yesterday, as you quite rightly pointed out, Steve. Nicolo Biliga yesterday set a 140.2 in FP2, so he's currently 7/10 of a second down on that time.
Just to look at Sam Lowe's as well, we saw a couple of electrical issues for him yesterday. I know you were down in the pit box trying to find out what was happening for him and the Mark VDS team, but what we've seen this season and through the winter is a rider with a new crew chief making a big step forward, and the Ducati package is obviously a very strong package. The independent riders get a lot of support. You saw that with Marco Zamberdetti in the pit box trying to solve that problem for Sam yesterday, but the Mark VDS team into that second season for them, they know that they have to deliver results, and they had their best weekend yet in Phillip Island. They want to build on that this week.
It's quite interesting with Ducati, because not only do they have the factory team, but they've got multiple satellite teams, and every one of the teams they have got that factory support in some sense, and that, we saw that yesterday with Marco Zambenedetti in the garage. We did see Sam Lowe's a couple of moments ago looking down at the bike, so not sure if he's still running into some of those problems we saw yesterday. As you quite rightly pointed out, he did have 2 problems, one during the session and one just as the checkered flag fell, so hopefully the Mark VDS team and Ducati have been able to sort that one out. So Remy Gardner, he's on a much better pace so far today at the moment, a 140.7. That is also 3/10 of a second faster, 4/10 of a second faster, I should say, than he managed in FP2 yesterday.
Yeah, and important for Remy to be able to do that. He needs to put together a good weekend, because for the Yamaha riders, they need to show that they should be the lead factory rider next year. Everyone's contract's up for renewal, and obviously Jonathan Rea had injured. He would have been expected to be that lead Yamaha rider, but there's a question mark about what happens for Yamaha next year. Remy's a former Moto2 world champion, a very established rider with his credentials, but is he a really good superbike rider? We've seen flashes of it. You think back to Assen last year being on the podium. Most was a really strong weekend. There've been a lot of times whenever you look at it and you see a rider that's right at the sharp end, Can he do that week in, week out to be that lead Yamaha rider in future? Or what do Yamaha do? And even though we're only at round 2, for a rider like Remy, the pressure builds up because you want to be that guy. You want to be the full factory rider. Obviously, everyone on the grid wants to be on the front and they want to win races. To do that right now, in all likelihood, you have to be on a Ducati. But for the likes of Remy, it's an opportunity to show that you can lead a factory, and at the end of the day, everyone here is a professional rider. It's a big job, and to have that responsibility from a factory is a big deal for all these guys.
Yeah, it's a big season for all of the Yamaha riders, as Danilo Petrucci, as he comes across the line. A 140.7 for the Italian, and that's quicker than he went yesterday by a couple of hundredths of a second. So a lot of riders this morning, Steve, are finding an improvement on the lap time. Some of them still maybe a couple of tenths off for the time being, so maybe just running some used tyres for the moment as Toprak slides into his pit box and very content as the two-time champion.
Yeah, you can see just comes in, quick debrief with Phil Marin. We're halfway through the session now. Toprak able to do 5 laps there and hasn't put in a fast time. 40.9 for Toprak. It's about a second slower than he went yesterday, but he could well be using the same tyre he used yesterday, and then you go out to try and put in a simulation for your Super Pole next, just to give yourself that bit of confidence going into that session. Even though that all the riders and the teams have some data from the test a few weeks ago, when we spoke to Sean Muir yesterday, he did say that it was a bit of an issue missing out on that FP1, 45 minutes of running that they've missed out on. So they've got a really condensed program, does the Toprak Razgatlioglu side of the garage, as he debriefs with Phil Marin on the right hand side of your screen. Just looking at the timing screens as well, Alex Lowe's on a really good lap. We can see that on the timing tower on the left hand side of the screen, the red sectors. Lowe's up by half a second at the halfway point of the lap. The last couple of laps, he's had that pace in the first 2 sectors. It's gone away, even compared to his own fastest time in the session in this last couple of sections. So we'll see what he can do in the last corner, but Lowe's looks like he's ready to maybe duck down underneath the 1 minute 40 barrier. Yeah, he may be the second rider this weekend to duck under that 1 minute 40 barrier. Not quite a 140 dead. That's 0.8 of a second quicker than he went in FP2 yesterday. So Alex Lowe's finding a lot of good time on that Bimota today, and Game Road, as we spoke to him yesterday, he was quite confident of a good result this weekend. Yeah, and a good result for Lowe's and Bimota is being able to come away with a top 6 finish. You know, it's about being realistic with a new project for that team, and they know what package they've got, and they're trying to make those incremental steps. For a rider like Lowe's, we know that he's a race winner, we know that he's a podium man, we know, and that's Bassani that's gone down. So it's one Bimota top session that's gone down. Oh, you're very right, and that looks like a fast crash there. You just see a piece of dangling from his right arm. That could be a turn 9 in underneath the Jones leap and down in towards that left-hander, and we know that Ryan had a big crash in Phillip Island and was fairly battered up from that and cut up a little bit, so hopefully no ill effects from that one. You can see he's just taking a moment there just to catch his breath. Let's see what happens as he comes over where the jump is at the end of the lap. You're not going to jump it in the middle of a session, but you can definitely get the bike a little bit loose over the top of that, and we've seen this time and again, and both wheels off the ground for Ryan, and that's a really big one for Ryan, and you can see why he needed to take his minute down there as well. Hopefully he doesn't get tagged by the bike here as it makes its way down. It looks like he's just about able to avoid the bike, but that's a big moment through there. We don't see too many crashes over the top of the crest, but we see a lot of big head shakes, and Ryan had both wheels off the ground as the bike was violently moving around. So it's really you're a passenger at that moment. Yeah, tank slapper that was from Ryan Vickers, a wrist snapper basically. We've seen that happen so many times with riders over the years. As soon as they get a head shake on, even if you do save it, it can cause a break to the wrist, and Ryan Vickers there sitting up and just taking a few moments there to get his breath back, because if there's one place you really don't want to go down on this track, it is coming down the hill and towards Craig Jones Corner. And Ryan Vickers there just taking his gloves off, thankfully walking away the British rider, but that was quite a scary moment. But hopefully he will be on the grid for the race, or hopefully before that he'll be in Super Pole later on today, but thankfully he was walking away. Yeah, exactly, and that's the main thing there for Ryan. But definitely it's one of those moments whenever you see just how violent it is when you have a crash. I remember being in Qatar one year, and there was a high side at turn 1 for Michael van der Mark, and it's only when you're beside it and you see just how quickly it happens that you're given that reminder, because obviously enough when you're watching everything through the course of a session, it's all similar to one another or relative to one another, and it's only whenever something goes wrong that you see just how fast these bikes are and just how difficult it is. And particularly around Portimao, because of all those undulations, it's almost like you're coming over a kicker there into turn 9, and unfortunately for Ryan, he just got caught out by it.
Yeah, great shame there for Ryan Vickers. Garrett Gerloff, he's had quite a struggle so far this weekend, and he's struggling to keep the front wheel down as he comes over the crest of the hill across the start-finish line. Just takes a tear off from his visor, and Garrett Gerloff is sitting pretty in 13th. Unlucky for some, but not Garrett at the moment. That bike is moving around quite a lot coming through turn number 1. Bit of an issue yesterday for the Puchetti Kawasaki, but he was back out in FP2 yesterday. We're watching Tito Rabat as he comes across the line, just moves into 22.4 seconds off Alex Lowe's time. The best lap time barring Top Rack so far this weekend for Alex Lowe's on the motor. Really looking comfortable so far in this morning session. As we watch Tito Rabat going towards turn number 3. Back now with Nicolo Buliga, who's on a very long run out. Their consistent lap times, currently sitting in 5th in the session on a 1:40.7. That's half a second slower than when he went yesterday. However, he could be out there on a used set of tyres. He comes across the line now, ticks off the lap time, and it's a 1:40.6. So he moves up to 4th position for the championship leader on the Aruba Ducati. Top Rack, he comes across the line to start his first flying lap of run 2, so he'll get a couple of laps in for the reigning champion, and it seems to be, so far this weekend, Steve, and for much of the weekend, you believe, the Buliga versus Top Rack show.
Yeah, and in all likelihood that's the way it will be, but those two riders typically seem to have that little bit of an edge over everyone right now, but you never know who's going to be able to qualify well, put themselves in the mix. And once you're in a race, particularly in the Superpole race, we always see riders make a big step forward. Alex Lowe's currently fastest in this session. He's a Superpole race specialist. He always seems to find a way for that race to come to him, and he was on the Kawasaki in the past. Hopefully for him on the Bimota that stays the same, but everyone else needs to do the same. You need to make those little steps, because in terms of outright speed, it looks like Top Rack and Buliga have that little margin over everyone right now, everywhere we go. And then it's up to the likes of Iannone. We can see they're just out on track in front of Top Rack. Petrucci, they're always needing to have to find that little bit more. Petrucci very consistent now from the second half of last year onwards. He really did make a big step forward. He showed well in Phillip Island. He needs to do the same here. You need to come away from these races with 3 podiums if you want to be a title contender. If you're having your good weekends in that second group, you need to make sure you got 3 top 5s and maybe 1 podium. So for a lot of riders, that's what the target is, and it's to try and see if you're able to stay in the mix with the other riders. But a long race here in Portimao is quite difficult to do that. A Superpole race is a good opportunity.
Yeah, we saw Alex Lowe's last year really putting a fight in with Top Rack all weekend, as we cut away from Top Rack, who is about to go to the top of the session with the fastest time this weekend.
This is going to be more than top. This is going to be a lap record from Top Rack.
Comes across the line, does Top Rack a 1:39.4, which has smashed the all-time lap record, which was previously set by Jonathan Ray in 2022. So yeah, Jonathan Ray's Superpole lap time, the all-time lap record, has been smashed by Top Rack.
A little thumbs up there from Chris Concho.
I love that, didn't I? It was so good, yes. Top Rack is back in this case it looks like BMW as well.
This is what's actually been quite interesting from Phillip Island into this week. Top Rack's Ducati Cup comment has obviously taken on a life of its own, and after Phillip Island, I think Top Rack would have been told, you've got to rein that down a little bit. And the reason for that is we know that Top Rack has the speed to be able to be the best rider in this class. For everyone else, you're having to try and catch up to it. Top Rack said yesterday that his comments were more based around what everyone else is doing. If you're on a Yamaha, if you're on a Honda, if you're on a Bimota, Kawasaki, what are your chances to get those leading results? Obviously, it's also where Top Rack is frustrated that he wasn't able to win in Phillip Island. But it's been interesting to see how he's tried to manage those comments and then how everyone else has been reacting to them. Alvaro Bautista basically said, you got to stop crying, you got to just get on with it, which was obviously quite ironic for everyone considering some of Bautista's comments in the past. But you're having to find ways to get yourself more competitive and get yourself to the front. It's so difficult against the Ducatis because they've got, as we spoke earlier, so many good independent riders and teams. Top Rack is a rider that can make that difference, and he is doing a great job again in this session. Not unexpected, because this is what he was doing in the test, where one of his favourite tracks. it's never quite as good as it looks, and it's never quite as bad as it looks. And I think Top Rack's Ducati Cup comment is somewhere in the middle of that, but it has taken on a life of its own.
It has. The top line motorcycle racers, when they're not winning, they just like to drop that little grenade there every so often, and it was the same for Top Rack. But Top Rack did have a very difficult off-season, including that hand injury as well ahead of Phillip Island, but that seems to have cleared up now, and of course we've come back to a track that he's done very well in the past.
Really good lap from Petrucci there, 3 tenths off Top Rack, but only a couple of tenths off the previous lap record from Jonathan Ray, so good effort there from Petrucci. Obviously lows earlier on, we saw with that low 1 minute 40. We'll see what Alvaro Bautista can do on his next flying lap as well. This is going to be his fastest lap of the weekend, but a few other good laps coming in from other riders as well. Sam Lowe's has just gone 4th fastest, a 40.1, just over half a second off a Top Rack's pace. So we're starting to see everyone do their simulation at the end of this session and try and get themselves that representative time for the Super Bowl session in just over an hour and a half's time.
Yeah, good point there you made about Petrucci. That is 8 tenths of a second faster than he went yesterday. Alvaro Bautista goes up into 5th with a 1:40.1. That's his fastest lap of the weekend by a gargantuan 6 tenths of a second. So you're quite clearly on the button there, Steve, that everyone is now getting their simulations in as Michael van der Mark comes across the line at 1:40.4, and that is a tenth of a second quicker than he managed yesterday. However, it's still almost 1 second off his teammate Top Rack Razgat Lioglu as the checkered flag comes out to end the session, and it looks like it'll be Top Rack once again that will be leading the way.
The outright lap record from Top Rack, but he set the pace in Sector 1 and Sector 2. In Sector 3 it's Petrucci, and in Sector 4 it's Alex Lowe's. So interesting to see that Top Rack obviously has that outright speed across all sectors, but the second half of the lap a little bit stronger for some of the other bikes.
Yeah, it's good. Good observation there from Steve, and of course, well, we hope to have all the manufacturers in the battle later on today, and of course for the rest of the weekend, as Top Rack's session comes to an end at the top of the pile, as he was yesterday in FP2. We watch Andrea Locatelli come across the lane, and Bautista's on for a good lap further behind, 3 tenths off at the second split. Locatelli goes into 7th, 1 second off, so it's a little bit higher up than we've seen Yamaha so far this weekend.
Yeah, Bulaga, the only rider in those leading positions that didn't improve his time in FP3 compared to yesterday. Some of that comes down to maybe he didn't have the same tyre to use like Bautista, who we know used 2 tyres yesterday. Bulaga typically used an extra one compared to Bautista, so maybe now he's having to think about that allocation a little bit differently, but Alvaro moves up to 3rd fastest.
Yeah, just missing out on the 1:39s was Bautista, but that was a good session from the 2-time World Superbike champion. Moves into 3rd right at the end, so happy days in the office for the Spanish rider, but none more so than Top Rack Razgat Lioglu, who just seems to have a little bit extra in hand compared to the rest. He ends the session 3.5 tenths up on Danilo Petrucci.
Yeah, and as we look further down the order, Iannone 12th, Redding 13th. They're riders that will have to make that bit of a step forward. Good effort though from Bahattin Safoglu. He's up there 18th fastest, which is ahead of the riders he needs to be ahead of. Tito Rabat, Jason O'Halloran, and the MIE Hondas. So he's doing his job there a little bit further down the field. Obviously, it's all about the other Turkish rider here in FP3.
Yeah, it is indeed. And, well, the Turkish fans will be cheering on not just 1, but 2 Turkish riders potentially going from pole position if Top Rack can convert his speed into pole later on today, as Chan Onche will be going from his first ever pole position in the Super Sport class later on today. So good stuff from all the Turkish riders and of course the Turkish fans, but great effort this morning from Danilo Petrucci. 9 tenths of a second faster he went compared to yesterday, and of course Alvaro Bautista rounding out your top 3. So it's all poised for potentially an enthralling race and Super Pole coming up today.
Yeah, and it's interesting to see when everyone sets their times. Obviously Petrucci at the end using it as his Q simulation. We saw Alex Lowe set the pace for the first half of this session very fast from the get-go, so that bodes well for the Bermuda. He's 4th fastest in this session, and he'll be expecting to give himself the chance of being up there in those front 2 rows of the grid in the Super Pole session. I think that would be a really good effort from him. Obviously what we're going to see is the comparison between the Bermuda and Andrea Locatelli and Remy Gardner. That's been a good battle for Phillip Island. Looks like it's going to probably continue here as well, and for all of those riders, they know that that's their real scrap, is to make sure that you're able to be at the front of that next group, and we'll wait and see what happens in the Super Bowl session.
Yeah, in terms of race pace yesterday, it looks like it's Top Rack, Bulaga and Bautista that are your top 3, with a good battle just behind, and of course it will be Alex Lowe's Andrea Locatelli, Daniele Petrucci and Andrea Iannone in the battle for that one. So after FP3, it is Top Rag Razgat Lioglu that leads the way heading into Super Pole coming up at 11 o'clock local time. A 1:39.4, a new all-time lap record from your reigning champion, just ahead of Danilo Petrucci, Alvaro Bautista, and then comes the Lowe's twins, Alex leading Sam, 4th and 5th, then Vandermark, Locatelli, Billiga, Gardner and Agator running out at your top 10, Bassani, Iannone, Redding, Vieja, Lacona, Gerloff, Montella, Sofwoglu, Mackenzie, Vickers, Rabat, and then it's O'Halloran and Zaidi rounding out your runners and riders.
Well, thanks for your company during Free Practice 3. We will be back for all of the action coming up later on for the Super Pole race, and that will be on JB Motorsports on the main channel. The link is in the description, and if you're watching, you'll be automatically redirected. So, Top Rat back. Let's see what he can do in Super Pole. We'll see you later on. Bye-bye.